All right, official predictions. Pereira versus, as you know what I was about to say Blachowicz. But Pereira versus Procházka, but I'm glad that I'm thinking Blachowicz. Blachowicz is extremely meaningful. First off, he's never really gotten his due from any of you. He never got his due from me. He really didn't. Now, he did get recognized as the world champion. He also went on and very quietly had one of the largest upsets in terms of actually upsetting people, which is when he beat Adesanya. The whole reason he was even there so Adesanya could take his belt and build a potential super fight against Jon Jones, right? I mean, Blachowicz was an afterthought. He goes out and wins, and I feel like it's still never been celebrated. I think that guy's owed a little something. Can we all agree at a minimum that Blachowicz is awesome? Can we all agree on that? Total stud. Can we all agree on that? Okay. Because Alex Pereira is my pick. And Alex Pereira has only been at 205 pounds one time, but it happened to be against Blachowicz. And I think that's very meaningful. There is not a scenario aside from the one that we're about to face on Saturday where I would pick Alex Pereira to beat Jiří Procházka at this stage in their career. Jiří Procházka is a great. He is an international great. He did some of his finest work in Rizin, just for example, in Japan before he ever got his opportunity here in the Ultimate Fighting Championship. Pereira is an amateur. Pereira is an amateur. I don't know of very many world champions. They exist. I don't know of very many world champions that have never had a wrestling match. They exist, but there ain't very many. I don't know of very many world champions in MMA that don't have a black belt in jiu-jitsu. As a matter of fact, this guy doesn't have any belt in jiu-jitsu that I'm aware of, and I would be aware if he had a brown or higher because I'm a professor in the art and I would get the list, and he ain't on it. He's had 8 wins and 2 losses. He's had 10 fights. He's an amateur. He is an amateur. I'm pausing and waiting for you guys to disagree, at least within your own mind. Have I got you there? Have you disagreed? Okay. That amateur was the champion of the world within this calendar year at 185 pounds. If that amateur wins on Saturday and becomes a champion of the world at 205 pounds, so he will be the champion of the world in the same calendar year at 2 different weight classes, not to mention 2 very distinctive weight classes, not to mention the weight class that he left of 185 pounds has a champion in it who did not make it out of the first minute with him. Alex Pereira should be Fighter of the Year. He should be recognized. The World MMA Awards needs to recast ballots and give the audience a second opportunity to weigh their options, and they need to mark the ballot for Alex Pereira. That's an amateur with no wrestling matches and no brown belt or higher in jiu-jitsu. I don't know that he has any belt in jiu-jitsu. I guess everybody gets a white belt, right? If you ever do jiu-jitsu, you get a white belt. You understand my point? And the one win that he has that made him a number 1 contender in this weight class is over the guy that we all just conceded a moment ago. Jan Blachowicz doesn't get enough credit. He's good. He's really good. Now you're juxtaposing that against Jiří Procházka, who's anything but an amateur. This guy is a pro. This guy is a veteran. I mean, this guy is on a comeback. And comebacks are a big deal, right? You can't come back if you didn't retire first. And I've never been satisfied with what happened with Procházka. And it seems like, hey, Chael, elect yourself mayor of Get the Hintville and understand you're never going to know. It's none of your business. I get that, but you guys know where I would be a curious guy. You guys are curious. We like to know things. I can't find out on Jiří. I went as far as to not make an accusation. I would never accuse him. But as far as to bring this forward and say, if it's not true, I need to hear from you, Jiří. And that can be your manager, your coach, that can be you. And if you don't know how to get a hold of me, or you got some weird deal against Uncle Chip, go to somebody else, they'll get me the message. But the Jiří story is a very hard one to follow. Okay? On December 2nd of last year, while preparing for a title defense scheduled to be on December 10th, 8 days prior to the match, Jiří Procházka hurts his shoulder. And we are told that the injury is the worst towards shoulders. So 4 shoulder injuries. This is the worst shoulder injury we have ever seen. That's a quote. I would do better for you if I could. I don't know who we is. I do not know who was making that statement. I don't know who we is. Dana White made the statement. I don't know who he was referencing. And I would never attempt to embarrass that person. What I'm sharing with you is it appears that was a misdiagnosis. That's great. That's great news. If there wasn't a misdiagnosis, then there's a miracle, and we need to know how it happened. That would be a modern day miracle, truly, of medicine. But either way, an injury 8 days prior to bell time, they took the belt off of him. And this is a semantical thing that many of you want to be able to say that he relinquished the belt. I don't want to fight you on that. You're wrong. And many of you will even send me clips where Procházka says, I relinquished the belt. I've seen those clips. It's not a fight that I want to have. I don't care. But when I tell stories, I tell them accurately. They took the belt from him. Do you understand? They took the belt from him for an injury that was 8 days before a fight that the world really didn't want to see. They did everything they could do to not book Glover Teixeira versus Jiří Procházka. It's very interesting because simultaneously you had a heavyweight champion who had an MCL issue and sat for 10 months, and the discussion of taking the belt from him never even took place. So it's an interest. All I'm trying to share, no conspiracy. I'm just trying to share. This is interesting. There's not a conspiracy. That happened. Everything that I just said happened, and it happened in the order that I said it. But by January, Jiří Procházka was taking to the internet and saying, I'm coming back. I'm ready to go. Let's fight. Nobody responded to that. Not one single athlete responded to that. Said, great, I'll be first. Nobody within the promotion responded to that. Whoever it was that said that's the worst shoulder I've ever seen, I would think that that person would really want to know what happened here, because either there was a misdiagnosis, which is great. That's great news. I'm not picking on somebody. Or there was a miracle. It's one of the two. There's not a third option. There's not a fourth option. You have two doors to go in. Which one was it? By February and by March, we now are seeing video of Procházka in training. So when he says, I'm willing and able and ready, we now know that he's not kidding. But nobody at the promotion backed that story. And no fellow fighter challenged him. So somebody with some inside information somewhere knew he's not ready and he's not available. Now, in the sunset of the tale that I just told, comes out an announcement through USADA that they tested him a record 22 times in 27 days. That in the history of their organization, they had never tested somebody 22 times in 27 days. I'll tell you right now, Procházka's clean. You can do an USADA test until you're blue in the face, or you could have me do an eye test. He's going to have to take his shirt off. But if he takes his shirt off and I assess him, I will be correct 100% of the time. Never wrong. Not only can I tell you if he's using, I can tell you what he's using. And I can tell you Procházka's clean. But I can also tell you they do not show up 22 times in 27 days unless they believe, they being USADA in this case, that he's dirty. And the story never added up from Jump Street. To have the worst injury, to have any kind of an injury, and the guy is not given more than a week, I'm just sharing, that never happens. But he wasn't removed from the USADA testing pool. It's a very important part of the story. Like if you're looking for some kind of, hey, wait a minute, this doesn't pass the smell test, that's relevant. If a guy is it's the worst injury you've ever seen. So, but let's focus on that, okay? Have you seen, let me ask the author of this statement, have you ever seen a shoulder injury that ended a guy's career? Oh yeah, hell yeah, I have, lots of. Okay, you have, and this is worse than those. Oh yeah, this is the worst I've ever seen. Okay, then in your mind, his career is over, which is one of the reasons that you took the belt back so fast. There was no reason to wait. There's no reason to wait if he's never going to return, but he stayed in the pool. I think that's a really interesting detail. I know Conor McGregor took a lot of flack for it. I know TJ Dillashaw, whether TJ plans to return or not, but he took a lot of flack for it. I know Darren Till, who did leave the pool so he could take substances, and I only know that because he opened his mouth. He should have kept his mouth shut, but I know they took flack for it, right? And Procházka didn't do that. He didn't leave the pool to heal that shoulder. He was tested anytime you want to come. They came 22 times in 27 days. He was there every single time, and he continued to be there. And yet he still healed a shoulder that was the worst that we've ever seen, and other ones that we've seen have ended people's careers. And we thought that was going to be yours, which is why we took the belt back and had no grace period and no sympathy, and it was a cold-hearted and mean thing to do, but we had the information known as the MRI of your shoulder. We were given the advice this was the worst that had ever been. So it's a very interesting detail when you're confronted with the fact that USADA has a new policy, which is if they flag an assay, if you want to admit to it, great. Everybody will know by morning. But if you choose to fight this, we will go through arbitration. There's a number of steps there. You guys have heard of a number of them. If it's a tainted supplement, right? You hear about all of this garbage. And if that happens, and you come back and you prevail, and a lot of people beat USADA. USADA was far, far from bulletproof. In fact, the mere fact, 4 guys beat them all in 1 month. In 1 month, we had 4 star heroes go down that if you search them on the internet, they'll never recover from it. They never got those sponsorships back. Between the 4 of them, they never main evented again. It ruined them. And USADA had all 4 of them wrong. Big deal. And I'm bringing to you that why was Procházka saying he was ready to fight? Why was he posting videos saying he was ready to fight? But nobody challenged him and nobody within the promotion backed that story. Why? And one possible answer is he got flagged on an assay through USADA. He fought them. He's an honest and clean guy. He fought them and he beat them. And I don't know that he should stay quiet if he did those things. And I actually heard from his manager, Tim Dillon, who happens to be a great guy. By the way, Tim, I don't know if we've ever actually met, but I feel like I know him. He happens to be a great guy. And he didn't like that I brought this up. I think that Tim might be misunderstanding my message. My message is in complete defense of Yuri. Yuri suffered an injury. 3 other athletes, Darren Till, Conor McGregor, TJ Dillashaw, all took massive flack for how they were going to cure that injury. Whether it's accurate or not, they put the pieces in place to give the naysayers a platform to say they were going to use. Yuri didn't do that. Yuri got tested 22 times in 27 days. There is no room for error. USADA is not great. They're just better than other guys. They're not great. 22 times in 27 days, it'll be perfect. Trust me when I tell you that. There's ways to beat them, but if they show up 22 times in 27 days, you will not have those windows that are needed. And every single time you have somebody in that situation, we all do the same thing. You fill out your whereabouts a certain way, and you buy yourself a certain amount of time. Should you make a mistake or they find you before that uploads to the page, you don't answer the door. And it's not known as a refusal. Just say that you were somewhere else. You get 3 mistakes in a county, right? I'm just sharing with you. Like, there's ways to do it when you're dirty. And I think this is one part that Tim Dillon was missing. I think that he was missing this. Yuri did not do any of those things. He could not have been cleaner. And if he did go through some kind of an arbitration that cost him his championship, it protected his reputation, but it cost him from making a living for a year, I think he should take his credit for that. I should take his bow. And if that's not what happened and I've got it wrong and a miracle took place, well, by God. That's something that you should share with the audience too. So where has Yuri been and why has he been gone is extremely relevant, because generally when a guy returns, he's not going to return as well as when he left. And Yuri was awesome when he left, but he had weaponized pace. It's the whole reason USADA showed up. They thought he was taking EPO. He had a pace that a human being doesn't have. Unless he's a superhuman, which means he's on EPO, or at least this is what USADA believed. He wasn't. He's not on it. I'm sharing this with you. It's important to understand Procházka. I am taking Alex Pereira, but I'm not willing to tell you that Pereira is a better fighter than Procházka. I'm rolling the dice that Procházka has been out, that injury that they said was the worst ever was at least greater than Yuri, who told us 1 month later, which actually only equaled 3 weeks, that he was back and he was ready. I don't know that he was. And if he wasn't, the question is, well, how long has he been back? How long has he been back? Because that is what's going to tell us if he's ready. He's always going to say he's ready. How long has he been back? 25 minutes is a long time. 25 minutes against opponents they're not all equal. 25 with this guy is not the same as 25 with that guy. And when you're dealing with Pereira, who had lost 20 minutes and knew he was in the last frame, meaning round number 5, and knew he needed to knock out Adesanya, it's exactly what he did. That's not a guy that you can show up partly ready for. He says, I'm ready. He says, I'm back. He said that for 11 months and 3 days. When exactly did he come back? Because that's going to be what determines, is he ready?